Hello, welcome back to the Wrestling and to AEW Redemption 2026 out of 10, the first ever Redemption taking place now in Canada, and basically it's kind of like a fast lane to WrestleMania, building up towards All In, but it's a big match on the card. Kenny Omega taking on Kevin Knight in the main event. We have Will Ospreay in action and much more, but we're going to start things off on the buy-in with the Trios Championship, the conglomeration Cassidy, Strong and O'Reilly defending the Trios titles against Jay Lethal, Lee Johnson and Blade Christian in the only buy-in match. The demand sat on the commentary table to watch. Roddy and Lethal kick things off for their teams. The conglomeration controlled the pace of the first few minutes, but Lethal Twist eventually managed to isolate Strong. All six of the guys are well regarded for their in-ring skills, but O'Reilly, Strong and Christian stood out the match. Their respective styles each bring something different to the table, and they help create some of the best moments in the match. The Trios titles often feel like an afterthought in AEW, but the talent always makes the matches fun. This is a good choice to put on the buy-in because it won't outshine the rest of the show, but it was still good enough to get the crowd excited for what's to come. The champ retained after Roddy hit Lethal with a huge backbreaker and then threw OC on top of him to get the pin. I'll go with 6 out of 10. As we then moved on to the main show, and the first match was the 6-man ladder match, Sam, the number one contender for the international title, featuring Beast Mortos, Nick Wayne, Jack Perry, Mike Bailey, Kamada and El Clon. The match started moments after the pay-per-view began, so we got right into it. All 6 men got into the ring and started fighting, which was a little strange since all of the ladders were set at ringside. Multi-man ladder matches have existed across multiple promotions for decades by this point, so we all came into this knowing it was going to be a series of car crashes. If we listed off every spot that looked painful, you would be reading this for a very long time. The bar has been set very high for this kind of stipulation, but AEW picked a variety of guys who were up to their challenge, especially the Freeman wearing masks. Wayne, Perry and Bailey had great moments too, but the Luchadors provided some of the biggest highlights. This was entertaining right from the get-go. It wasn't perfect, but few matches with this many moving pieces are. Everyone involved did an excellent job making sure the crowd got what they paid for. Several tables were broken around the ring to get some extra excitement to an already exciting bout, and the hometown boy ended up winning when Bailey took down the contract's clean title shot and the crowd erupted for him. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. We then got the Young Bucks versus Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay. Matt and Nick had a bone to pick with Ospreay after he took away their EVP status last year, so they were hoping to get some revenge. Matt and Ospreay started the match with a fast-paced exchange that led to the Bucks getting some of their double-team offense. Nick and Ospreay had a headbutt spot that looked like it caught both guys more than they expected. Nick ended up taking a little longer break at ringside while Matt continued the match. Mox and Ospreay became more aggressive as the match progressed, especially while they were double-teaming Matt. Once Nick recovered, he and his brother were able to regain some momentum. We saw some creative spots in this match, and the way they told the story of Nick being injured, how to add some more drama. Everyone had a part to play, and they did it about as well as you could expect. Nick appeared to have issues standing, and Ospreay gave him a chance to tag his brother, but refused. When Ospreay refused to take advantage of an injury, Mox tagged in and hit a stop. Ospreay continued to operate as a babyface while associated with the Death Rider, so a lot of people came into this battle expecting him to embrace the dark side, but he refused to portray his morals, letting the Bucks get the win. So yeah, a very interesting story being told there, and I'm going to give it 7 out of 10. We then got Cole Fletcher against Bandido for the international title. Angel, whoever won this bout, would already have Speedball waiting in the wings for a title shot. They exchanged a few brief words before throwing forearms at each other. Fletcher stood several inches taller than his opponent, but it's hard to call that an advantage against the guy as versatile as Bandido. The protest style came in cocky, but he ended up rethinking his strategy when Bandido almost won a couple of minutes in. Once he gained the upper hand, he spent a long time controlling the pace. The great thing about both these guys is their versatility. Both can grapple, they can fly, and just about anything else you can want a wrestler to see. Whenever you put these two guys in the ring, it's going to be enjoyable. They spent a bit more time selling big spots than anyone else in the matches, but came this one, and it helped to set this apart. It felt more structured than how it played out, which worked to its advantage and allowed them to pick up the pace toward the end to make it the most exciting stretch. This is the kind of match you just have to see to truly kind of appreciate. Both guys turned in an incredible performance, but only one could leave with the gold. After a couple of convincing fourth finishes, Fletcher hit the win. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. We then got the Dogs versus Bang Bang Gang in a double chain match, and White and Robinson were looking to get rid of their big rivals in this match. Essentially it's the same as a double strap match, but it uses metal chains instead of leather straps. Collins and Finley attacked their opponents before the ref had a chance to call for the bell or attach the chains completely. Once everything was officially underway, Juice and Jay were able to swing the enter in their favour. Even though the chains allowed them to do some interesting stuff, they also limited in some ways. They slowed down in places, which helped them sell the severity of their injury. It also kept them from being as excited as it could have been. However, we don't want to downplay how hard all of these guys work. Their bout is going to leave them some bruises, and they did their best with limited stipulations. Garcia and Yuta interfered, attacking White, but the Guns and Ace Austin showed up to help their allies. Marina stuck him with Shirley to Finley, and he used to nail Robinson to get the win. So yeah, an intriguing storyline coming out. I'm going to give it 6 out of 10. It was then time for Maya World versus Hikaru Shida for the TBS title. Maya's been rising through the ranks and had her biggest opportunity to stay here, trading strikes for a couple of minutes to get things started, but once Shida took control, she slowed it down a bit so she could be more methodical. Whenever Maya was able to get into some offense, she picked up the pace again. The match came at roughly the halfway point in the show, which is not an easy position during these long pay-per-views, especially when so many of the bouts came before were so good. It was the match that took place in the main event of an episode collision. It would be highly praised, but sadly it's going to be forgotten due to its placement in the card and kind of the strength of the other performances. Maya did a great job playing the underdog to the bully. Shida, especially once she started selling a knee injury. This might not have stolen the show, but it was still an entertaining contest between two talented performers. Maya survived some brutal moves from Shida before she caught her with a pinning combination to get the upset win and become the new TBS champion. The final few moments were the highlight of the match, and yeah, big accomplishment for Maya. 6 out of 10. As we then moved on to Cage and Cope versus the Death Riders for the tag titles. And it was Pac and Castanelli for the Death Riders. As soon as Copeland got to the ring, he was attacked from behind by the challengers. Cage had to run to the ring to help his partner because he hadn't made his entrance yet. Pac and Claudio were firmly in control when the match started. Cage took a little while to recover and get on the apron for a tag after being thrown into the steel steps. It took the Rated R Superstar a long time to mount some offense and make the tag to Christian, who had only just recovered from the pre-match tag. This was a solid tag match. With fun moments, but there was lack of any kind of significant build-up which may have hurt it. The action was enjoyable because all four of the guys are skilled veterans, but it wasn't quite enough to stand out on this pay-per-view. Cage and Cope picked up the win to retain their titles, pretty unsurprisingly. So yeah, overall I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. As we then moved on to our next match, which was no holds barred between Jericho resurrecting his Painmaker gimmick to take on Ciampa. For those unaware, Montreal does not allow intentional bleeding in matches, so a lot of people were interested to see how they work the stipulation without blood. Using chairs, fire extinguisher and some other weapons to inflict punishment, it was clear they were intentionally avoiding anything that might make them bleed for a while. The match was more of a series of moments than a cohesive match, which can sometimes work with this kind of stipulation, but it didn't really pick up until Jericho brought some tracks and hockey pucks into the ring. Jericho ended up making Ciampa bleed with some sandpaper, which definitely opened up a gusher on his hand. After that, the match became more extreme. We saw them break a mirror and Ciampa grabbed the same drill he had threatened Jericho with before. The Paintmaker ended up making Ciampa give up when he used the drill on his head. So yeah, it's still a pretty violent match, that's for sure. And yeah, overall I'm here at 6 out of 10. Like I said, it's a pretty fun match. I think Jericho getting the win is probably what we expected, but yeah, fun match. As we then moved on to the National Championship, Mark Davis chasing Andrade. Andrade stole the win right out of the gate with a big elbow strike, but Davis was able to kick him back into the corner for some shoulder thrust. Andrade stayed aggressive, but Zumpter has stayed in the fight. These two men have very different in-ring styles, so the pace changed a bit whenever the tide shifted, but that kept us on our toes. Both guys clearly wanted to make sure this bout was not overlooked. This was a highly physical back and forth that gave both men plenty of opportunities to shine. Davis leaned into the power game and Lilo did a great job finding counters. After a hard-fought battle, Lilo was able to get the win and become the champion. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what he can do with the belt, to be fair. 7 out of 10. Moving on, it was then time for Thekla versus Willow for the women's title. Only title that's eluded Willow. As soon as she got her hands on the champ, Willow grabbed her and hit a spine buster. She bit on Thekla for a while before sending her right out of the ring with pants. The Toxic Spider avoided the cannonball and Willow went right into the steel steps. The wound on Willow's ear was bleeding through the bandage after Thekla pulled at it, so she started focusing a lot of her attacks on that spot. There are many ways in which these two women are different, but they were able to work together to produce a hard-hitting contest that had some good moments in it. Willow sold her ear injury perfectly, and Thekla continued to go after that injury, played into her heel persona perfectly. Monet was watching from the crowd, was a reminder that she's waiting in line. The Toxic Spider grew more frustrating each time she failed to put Willow away. Sky Blue saved Thekla from being pinned, and the momentary distraction allowed the champ to hit a spear. Willow avoided the stomp for you scored a backslide for the victory and becoming a new champion. A good finish to a great match, and I think Mercedes versus Willow, I think on such a big stage that's going to be a really great match. So 8 out of 10. Moving on into Kenny Omega versus Kevin Knight for the world title. Kevin Knight may be the TNT champion, but he was looking for an upgrade here in the main event. Knight attacked Omega before the bell got underway to give him an unfair advantage. He even used his wrist tape to choke the champ before the ref could break them apart. The Jet has had a lot of success in his short AEW career, so even if he didn't end up winning, putting on a good performance in the main event would still raise his stock significantly. As usual, he was up for the challenge, even though Omega was making brief comebacks. Knight had the upper hand for long stretches of time. They kept a brisk pace, but they took the time to sell the bigger spots too. This is an exciting and well-structured match that made Omega look like a fighting champion, and Knight looked someone who belongs in the main event. If AEW wants to test the Jet and see how he fared in high-pressure situations, he definitely passed. He tried a few dirty tricks, but the one-winged angel put him down for the free. The Death Rider attacked Omega as soon as it was over, but Oscar came out to defend him. He chased most of them off, but Mox wanted to get into his head, handing with a plastic bang, told him to finish the job. He considered it, but he ended up tearing it and up and decking Mox to the floor to take him out of the ring. He fought off the rest of the Death Riders while Omega was trying to cover. He and Omega grabbed him and he hit the one-winged angel onto Ospreay. The show ended with Omega posing with the title. So yeah, it feels like Omega is going to become more of that heel character, and I think that is the right way to go, to be honest. But yeah, I'm excited to see where it all goes. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Overall, AEW Redemption gets a 7 out of 10 from me. AEW pay-per-views have a great track record in 2026, and the show added to that. It might have had a couple of slow points, but the highs stood out much more. Seeing My World and Willow win their respective titles were two of the biggest highlights from a excitement perspective. Andrade winning the national title was also a nice moment, but as far as match quality goes, one bout stood out about the rest. Fletcher and Bandido absolutely stole the show. Even Omega and Knight couldn't reach that same level, but they still put out a great match. There are some people who will do down about this show because of a few matches in the middle, and that is valid, but the majority of what we got was very enjoyable. But I do feel like these shows probably need to be watered down a little, especially kind of B tier shows like Redemption. So yeah, 7 out of 10 from me.
For this video, thanks very much for watching. Remember to like, share, subscribe, follow us on our socials, link in the description below for daily wrestling news, meme and content. Subscribe to our other channels on screen right now, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thanks very much for watching. Peace out.